My first interview was totally disaster.
On how people should approach the first 3 months.
How good actually you are at in storytelling.
Walk me through the three financial statements.
Understand what are the deliverables,
What are the 3 questions?
what ultimately matters is around your cash flow.
I have done so many case studies myself.
Very few people know about what FP&A is.
Excel is going to be the most important skill.
Attending, certifications and master classes adds value here.
First of all, understand about the
Let's celebrate that all of us are accidental FP&A guys. So,
business.
Hey, hi Gaurav, hi Abhinav, how are you doing?
Hey, hi Asif. We are doing good, thank you.
Thanks,
hi,
thanks.
Asif, good to see you.
Same here, nice, always nice meeting you guys. Thank you for joining me today. As you know, we are meeting for contributing to this book that I am writing, which is Accounting to FP&A. And what I feel is your experience and your insights will be definitely be valuable to our readers. So what we did was we took a survey from about 500 people from LinkedIn mostly, and we asked them what are the questions that you have on FP&A, and most of the people were from accounting and audit roles and were keen on learning more about FP&A. So we ran that survey, and the questions that we'll be discussing today are some of the questions that were most repeated or that were frequently asked. So if you guys are okay, we will get right into that.
Yeah, Asif, and in fact, thank you for having us for this conversation. We would love to sort of, like contribute something from our end as well.
Thanks, Gaurav. Thanks, Abhinav. So let's start with how did you guys got into FP&A? What was your experience? Maybe we can start with Abhinav and then Gaurav, you can add yours.
Sure, Asif. So, I qualified in 2017, and my articleship has always been into, auditing as well as accounting and taxation. So, I have, learned only the compliance part during my, articleship days. And to be very honest, when I qualified, I was literally not aware about there is something called FP&A. Okay. So even, when we used to go out for jobs, mostly they were offering us same audit, same taxation, same kind of profiles. So, I had that mindset, it is something that is being offered to, CAs normally. So when I kind of took my first job, I wanted to try out certain things that were not, something common that time. So I choose a path that was towards data analyst. Okay, so I joined Infosys, wherein my role was, to work with data, understand the intricacies of data, and to create something insightful from the data. So at that point of time, I was not interacting with the, business key stakeholders. I was only working on the data. And during that journey, I learned a lot of things about data modeling, how to play around the data, how to take out insights, a lot of things on dashboarding front. And after 2 years, I got that sense, if I, combine my data analytical thinking with business, and that is what is FP&A. Okay, so after that, I kind of got an opportunity to start as a fresher, in FP&A, a guy who has certain data acumen abilities, but nothing as such, about the business. But the thing that worked on my favor was, since I came from auditing background, so there was a conception that, the guy already understands, how to read the financial statements, how to make it compliant ready. So that is how I started. That was a skill that I had. And after that, it has been our experiences. We used to work on different problems related to FP&A, be it your, monthly forecasting, budgeting. And then after that, it has been experience, with different kinds of problems, different types of, challenges. And, that is, how I really transitioned from auditing and accounting. So at that time, there was that kind of a conception, but that is how I really, overcame it during that time.
Got it. So I can relate. So even when I took up my first FP&A role, which was 10 years back, I did not know that it was FP&A until after a couple of months, I saw my job description in very much detail. So when I went for the interview, I just looked at it casually, and I did not notice also that there's something called as FP&A. It
Yep,
looked more of an analyst role, which
yep,
is, as you mentioned, more on data analysis uh, and reporting. So data analysis and reporting is what I thought it was, and it was more or less at that time it was that was the role as a beginner. But I can relate. A lot of people do not know after clearing CA also, they don't know there is a profile called as financial planning and analysis, which is something that they could be interested in. So I think that brought a very valid point. And your experience as a data analyst and your background with CA and audit, I think that's a very good combination for anybody who's watching this to succeed in FP&A. How have you got to FP&A eventually?
So if I have to speak by in like one word or one line, by accident or by sheer luck only, because my experience is also like similar to just what you were like mentioning about your story. So if I talk about myself, so I started my articleship journey with EY in the statutory audit department, and after like 6 7 months, I was pretty clear this field is not for me. And like you see, like the work at that time was fun, but like it was not something that I was very passionate about, and I was very clear that this is definitely I'm not going to pursue like when I clear my CA. And in fact, I just wanted to run away from audit so much that during the third year of our articleship, we have an option of industrial training. So I was pretty clear it is like in EY, I would have gotten 6 months of paid leaves for exams preparation, and if we go for industrial, hardly anybody offers, like such kind of leaves because it's 1 year of duration. So maximum you get is 2 or 3 months leave at the max in case you are able to convince your employer. But after all that, I was very clear that I have to go for industrial training. And during my like hunt for industrial training, I came across this profile. Philips was offering post in their FP&A department, but उस time मुझे कोई idea नहीं था. I appeared for the interview. Interview according to me went fine, but unfortunately I did not get a yes from them, and I had to ultimately settle with Kotak Mahindra Bank, and I was part of their corporate banking team. But उस मतलब post that experience as well, honestly, बस मुझे इतना पता था कि there is something called as an FP&A, but उसमें exactly क्या करते हैं, what my role would have been, I hardly had any like idea. And post qualification, so if I talk about, I also qualified in 2017. So if I talk about like the offers that I had, so EY was offering me statutory audit. They also offered me tax as well. I also got an offer from Infosys, but I ultimately settled with Vedanta Limited. There they were offering me like a post in FP&A department, and I appeared again for FP&A kind of roles in other organizations as well, like so Nestle. So this was something like at that time, honestly, I was still not very clear, but कुछ लगता था मतलब सुन के वेरी फैंसी या थोड़ा बहुत जो पढ़ा था मैंने गूगल से, it always used to attract me, and I just wanted to like give it a shot. So I started my journey then with Vedanta, and I was part of their corporate FP&A department, and I was reporting directly to the group CFO in their Gurgaon office at that time. So that's how, like just by sheer luck or by accident, I would say, my FP&A journey started, because honestly, at that time, I had no idea. And if I talk about my peers, my friends, like whosoever I had around me at that time, I always used to say, everybody was like, कहाँ जा रहे हैं? किसी को कुछ नहीं पता है. Then what kind of role is this? Because hardly nobody knows about it. So that's how, like it started. But then, like 1 month or two months in the role, I understood, and I like since that time I'm like till date very fascinated about what we do in FP&A. and I really, love and passionate about what we do in FP&A.
I can relate to it very much. So I also started with EY in audit. So this was, I think, 14 years back, and at that time I thought, okay, let me at least complete the articleship. So I completed the articleship. The only two things that kept me at EY for 3 years of internship was, one was the travel. So initially I used to find that very fascinating. So I was traveling every other month, taking flights to different parts of India, and sometimes even outside India. So that was the only thing that was keeping me in audit for 3 years. But once I completed the internship, I was also very clear, okay, this is not something I can do for another 10, 15, 20 years. And immediately I started looking for, after completing the CA qualification, which is 2013, 14, somewhere in the beginning of 14. I wanted to get into valuation, but nobody took me in valuation because they said, okay, you don't have valuation experience, we'll not take you. Uh, then I thought, okay, let me prepare for investment banking roles. So I started preparing for investment banking roles. And after doing all the certification, etc., I realized, okay, they only take IAM people and they only take rankers, and I am not IAM, I'm not a ranker. So probably wo bhi nahi hua. I gave like 7, 8 interviews, but I did not clear it. Mostly because of the reason that people who were competing with me were from IAMs or people who were rankers. So this was for me also an accident, the third choice after valuation में नहीं मिला, investment banking में नहीं मिला, so I got into FP&A. But at that time FP&A was very basic. So what I used to do 10 years back was just reporting. But how it has evolved in the last, especially in the last 5 years, once cloud computing and all the basic processes got automated off for reporting, is when FP&A, especially people who are working in India, uh, they must have experienced that shift in from that reporting and doing basic tasks to getting the reports automated and then focusing more on adding value, whether it be through management commentaries or it be through preparing forecast or helping in the budget. So I think that was very similar experience I had. So thank you for sharing that. Any comments before we move to the next section? Anything that you want to say, Abhinav, Gaurav?
I think interesting, Asif. I think let's celebrate that all of us are accidental FP&A guys. So,
Yeah,
but yeah, I think as of today, I think all three of us are enjoying what we do and what we, so that has really, turned out to be more passion now, what it started accidentally.
yeah.
So yeah.
I think that's a key learning. So the reason for you to be getting into this role should not be that because you find it, as Gaurav mentioned it should not be because you uh, find this to be very catchy or fancy because a lot of other people are going into it. It should be because it should be because something that either you don't like what you're doing in the current role and this is the better option. That could be one reason, or this is something that you've understood it well and then you decide, okay, this is something I want to do. So it should be either of those rather than just going in going in it by chance and then realizing, okay, this is not something I am good at, or this is not something I can do, which is the key takeaway for me at least. So let's get into the next section. So let's talk about what are the challenges that you faced while. So you mentioned, right, you got into FP&A roles at Vedanta uh, and the other company that Abhinav mentioned. So what were the challenges that you faced while you were appearing for interviews, while you were going into those roles?
So I think let me answer this. So I would like to, answer it from both perspectives. One is during the interview stage, and one is that, once we started in a job, like what were the initial challenges that, I faced. So from the interview perspective, FP&A interviews were somewhat, very different. That has been my experience. So I never had, any experiences, wherein they're asking any case studies, in audits or in taxation. It was more asking, they're asking about any audit standard or any section, But when I appeared in my first FP&A interview, they gave me one case study and asked me to, analyze it, provide, what should be the KPIs that we should look at, what is going wrong, can you tell us? So such kind of questions were asked, and my first interview was totally disaster. I can, tell you, because at that time, practically there was no guidance, honestly, and and I was competing with guys who were mostly, MBAs. I remember hardly there was any chartered in that room. So that was my first memory with my interview. But then I got that just, how I should really prepare. So then I started practicing it out, started reading a lot of annual reports, start reading a lot of commentaries, every quarterly. So I got a fair understanding, what really, they are looking for. So one thing was they wanted business acumen, that, I can answer that in the interview. Plus they were looking for certain technical capabilities, and at our time it was totally Excel. Okay, so they used to check our Excel capabilities, how, comfortable I am using in certain formulas in Excel, how quickly I can turn around things, because that was the expectation, right? Even if I talk about reporting, you have to deliver it within 3 days, 4 days, right? So you have to be really fast. So I kind of, worked on those two skills during that time for my interviews. And then, finally I got the breakthrough. I got selected in Japanese, giant, one of the biggest companies of Japan, wherein I got to work in their FP&A team. Okay. And then, initially, 1 or 2 months was challenging in terms of, the kind of systems they were using, the kind of cloud computing they were using. I have never used that, so I was kind of exposed to that, for the first time. So initial 2 3 months was, digesting, what is, how to really use the system, how to really, work around the system. That was one part wherein I had to struggle initially. And then, talking to different people, interacting with business teams, getting the data, and producing reports. Initially my role was for first 6 months was only backward looking analysis. I was just doing, reporting, normal reporting, and, just creating that management commentaries and giving it out on periodical basis. Slowly after 5 6 months, once I started settling down, then, I was given additional responsibilities of, forecasting, reforecasting. Then I was involved in annual operating plans. I believe, that was some initial challenges I had to take and, overcome. And yeah, one thing that I have realized now, when I relook at my journey, it has been evolving very fast. you know the things that used to take me 6 months, or that took me 6 months back then, 4 5 years ago, expectation today, when I see, if I have to, hire someone in my team, or if I am going for any interview, expectations have been reduced from, 6 months to 15 days, wherein people are expected to deliver, from initial 2 3 weeks. So FP&A has evolved, and, and that has been the really, some of my learnings, how, I struggled in interviews, then how I struggled during my initial job. But yeah, that is my experience, Asif.
Thanks for sharing that. So I can relate. So case studies is something that people usually give to FP&A interviews, especially people who are new, senior analyst roles. So I can relate. I have done so many case studies myself. And the other thing that you mentioned, that initially your job or your role was more on reporting and management commentaries. So that was also something very common with me. So for 6 months, I did not do any forecasting, any budgeting, any presentation to somebody like a director, which I thought I would be doing. But then that is where I realized later on that it takes about 6 months to 1 year for others in the team to trust you to be able to do some critical role. So initially, a lot of people watching this and who are new to FP&A may feel that I'm doing a lot of repetitive work, or I'm doing a lot of what do you call data cleaning job, or whatever,
Yeah.
teamwork, or whatever people call it, because So they might be new, but eventually after 6 months, 8 months, so they need to have that patience. I've seen so many people who quit in the first 2 3 months because they thought, okay, this will be their work for life, and then I mean that part is a very challenging part. The first 3 to 6 months that you mentioned. How about you, Gaurav? How was your experience?
First of all, I would like to say all this is very nostalgic because after hearing you and Abhinav, like it feels like we all were some sort like in this sailing in the same boat, and we all had like some sort of similar experiences one or another. So all this is very nostalgic. So if I talk about like challenges, so I would like to say it from two perspectives. One is from the interview perspective, and second is once you get inside that department, because generally during our CA journey, like in our education, like during our articleship, as I was mentioning earlier as well, hardly like very few people know about what FP&A is. They have like very little idea. या सुना भी नहीं होता, like 90% ने तो सुना भी नहीं होता. So once you actually like somehow land in an FP&A role, either by accident or by your own will, that again itself becomes a challenge, as you were also mentioning out that first 3 to 6 months is actually very critical, because I've also seen many people quitting or like what is this, I can't do this kind of work. So that is also very critical. So if I talk about like from interview perspective, so that is definitely one thing, like during our articleship, because when we appear for articleship interviews as well, generally 90% of the roles that are offered to any of the interns, senior interns, is for audit, and rest 10% or 15% is for taxation primarily. So the kind of questions that come out and when you actually appear for an FP&A interview, because आप पिछले 3 साल से वही सोच रहे हो, you have heard stories around those roles. So that is like totally different, because when you appear for an FP&A interview, apart from your financial acumen, like I used to see people, like having a Ind AS book or a AS book, पूरा इस AS में ये लिखा है, ये लिखा है. But when you actually sit for an FP&A interview, because since it is internal reporting, none of it actually matters. Point is, you have to, like have a very deep understanding of the business, their financials, if their numbers are moving somehow, if like, because when the results come out, every management, they, like give a commentary, or they have, like a story to weave, like why the numbers have moved. So I think that is the most critical part. And if I talk about like my Vedanta experience as well, so generally it happens कि there are like 20 people who have come for the interview, and अगर आपका लास्ट में नंबर आ रहा है तो आप सबसे पूछते रहते हो भाई अंदर क्या पूछा. So I did not, like even go through their financials and all that stuff. एंड आराम से बैठे हैं हम अपनी तरफ से वही ए वाली सारी तैयारी करके बैठे कि ठीक है आता है. एंड द फर्स्ट कैंडिडेट केम आउट, सब लोगों ने वही घेरा, थोड़ा सा पूछा लाइक व्हाट वाज द क्वेश्चंस एंड ऑल. तो धीरे धीरे पता चला कि दे आर लाइक आस्किंग अबाउट देयर ओन फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट्स कि हमारा लाइक बॉटम लाइन क्या है, टॉप लाइन क्या है. अब उस टाइम like most of the people also sometimes do not understand what is bottom line, what is top line. तो पहले तो गूगल करके यही होता है भाई ये क्या होता है. So all this and then फिर समझ आया कि कहीं स्टोरी वगैरह भी पूछी जा रही है कि फॉर एग्जांपल their last year bottom line number was this year's bottom line number was this, so why it moved, if it moved. So so that was like again something very fascinating while I was waiting for my turn to appear for the interview. uh, so this is, I think, a very critical or a very challenging part when you are actually, like for the first time in your career, you are appearing for an FP&A interview. I would advise everybody to, like first of all, understand about the business, like what are their main revenue streams, what are the key drivers that may move their different revenue streams, and similarly, what kind of expenses or what is the biggest line item when it comes to their like operating expenses that would appear in their financial statements. And uh, then other thing, very common question that I have seen, like if you appear for FP&A interviews, is that you choose any company, be it their company or any company that you like, and then you try to forecast that 1 year down the line, that how their income statement would move, and what are the drivers or what are the variables that you think, like would move their financial statements. So it is not like an exact science that आप एकदम से सब सही बोले. It's just that they want to understand that whether you have that acumen or that understanding कि you are able to like somehow reach at their financial statements 1 year down the line. So this is again a very common thing, and I see that like initially, if it's your first interview, it may be very overwhelming for like most of the candidates, because you are definitely nervous at that time and आपको भी ज़्यादा पता नहीं, and these are not like very common things that you see, because आपका again, if you talk about your circle, generally हर कोई audit के लिए prepare कर रहा होता है, and audit में such kind of questions are not asked. And again, then coming to the case studies bit, this is again a very common format जो FP&A interviews में होता है कि आपको case studies दी जाती है. And then I think, as Abhinav was also mentioning, that आपका Excel and PowerPoint, I would like to add PowerPoint as well. They generally want to assess you on these two parameters as well, that how good you are at Excel and how good or comfortable are you with PPTs as well. Because still, I would say PPT is still like very prevalent throughout the industry, at least in India. And now, obviously, whosoever has higher budget, they have like moved to some data visualization tools as well. But still, PowerPoint is your go-to like tool if you have to present in front of senior management. So at that time again, you have to be like on top of your Excel skills, on top of your PowerPoint skills when you appear for the interview. And one more thing I would say is like how good actually you are at in storytelling. Because one thing is that okay, you have done the data preparation, you are good in Excel and all that stuff, you understand little bit of the business as well. But how good the personality, or how good you are actually communicating your point. Because again, in audit, like you actually do not have to face the senior management and present the numbers in front of in front of like a room full of like people. But in FP&A, you should have that communication ability where you are able to like once you have done your reporting bit, you understand the numbers, you have prepared some commentary, you actually need to communicate it to the relevant stakeholders. uh, so that is again a very critical thing that you need to understand. So I think in context of interviews, these are some of the challenges that I feel, or at least like somehow I also face them. uh, then coming to once you are like landed in the role, so usme I believe initially like people are like हमें अपना first impression काफी अच्छा जमाना है and all that stuff. So sometimes people start missing the basics, or they do not actually try to understand कि वो कर क्या रहे हैं. So I would say कि once you actually land in there, it's very important that first of all you understand what are the deliverables that are expected out of you. देन आप सबसे पहले उसके डेटा प्रिपरेशन पे ही काम करो, बिकॉज इनिशियली इफ यू डू नॉट अंडरस्टैंड हाउ द नंबर्स आर मूविंग, दैट इज फाइन. पहले आप उस फाइल, उस डिलीवरेबल को समझो, and slowly from there, like within 2 to 3 iterations of doing that data preparation bit that is expected out of you, you start understanding what this number is, what does it mean. And while you are like in your review meetings, you will understand that how your other stakeholders are consuming the numbers that you are presenting. And then from there, you try to understand key how it is affecting my business, because that is again very critical. If number moves from this to this, like higher or lower, so is it good, it is bad, and what is the driver that is driving these numbers. So I think these are some of the things जो आप again you slowly like gradually you are able to realize that just that for first 3 to 6 months you have to have that fighting spirit, that patience, that perseverance. And again, talk to your peers, understand from them, because of peers so at least you can you can communicate within your team that please help me, I'm totally new, like so just little bit hand hold me.
I think again you also reminded me of my time when I used to give interviews. I think 8 7 8 years back, and the first interview I gave a very similar experience. So I was preparing all the accounting questions and the all the accounting standards, but then what they asked was on the business. So I can totally relate, and that's the mistake we want people to avoid after reading this book or after watching this. That is something that we hope that they'll watch this before they go for their first or the second interview. So thank you for sharing that. And also once you get into the role, you talked about getting into the basic understanding the data, what the file is, before you start thinking about I mean over delivering. Basics are more important, and if you get the basics right, then eventually you will get to a stage where you can understand, as you mentioned, how people are using that data. And then once you understand that, then you can think about adding more value. So thanks for sharing that. Anything else, any other thoughts on the next section was going to be on the first 30, 60, 90 days, how should people approach. Any more thoughts come to your mind, Abhinav? Any other thoughts on how people should approach the first 3 months? If there is anything you want to add, or else we can go to the next section.
I think we can move to next section. Yeah.
So now we talked about your interview experience. Now, if tomorrow you have to hire, or today if you have to hire somebody in your team, what are the three questions you will ask Abhinav, and what are the three questions you'll ask Gaurav to assess if the candidate is the right fit for your team? We can take Abhinav first, and then we move to Gaurav.
And that's a very interesting perspective. What are my top three, questions,
Any key questions that you think would be sufficient to get an idea of how the candidate is compared to the other options that you have? So, if you have only three questions, say 10 minutes to interview a candidate, what would
Yeah.
you ask? What would you ask?
The first question that is on my, checklist always is that, I ask a very basic question. That is, walk me through the three financial statements. So, what I really assess while a candidate is answering, what do they understand by three financial statements is that how they really, read those statements. Do they understand the concept of linkages? How a balance sheet, how a transaction has an impact on balance sheet, how it impacts cash flows, how it impacts profitability. So my first question is a very generic question. I want to understand how comfortable, how do they really understand the three financial statements. Okay, once I got that fair understanding, how, they, where they are in that journey, then the second question is more a very industry specific. Okay, so if I'm hiring for a, for example, a professional services company, right? So I would try to, understand, what does he understand, how, professional industry businesses work. Okay, so maybe I kind of throw certain, a small business case, I am running a, professional services company. What should be my revenue streams? How I really, look at what kinds of operating costs should I look at? How should I calculate the bottom line? What should be the key KPIs, So that is more very industry specific, and it depends upon the type of industry for which, or even it goes to the, that level also. If he's coming from, or she is coming from a certain industry, I just kind of, replicate that. Okay. So now suppose you have to, start that entire company again, so how will you really approach? So in that sense, I got a kind of understanding, how do they really, kind of apply their knowledge, what they have learned till now. And the third question would be definitely a technical question, how, like, the tools they understand. If they say that they understand Excel, okay, so what kind of, experience do they carry? Do they understand, macros? Do they understand, how to do a dynamic referencing? So something on the technical front, so that I can really estimate the kind of technical trainings the candidate may require. So that is how I would really break it down. One would be the general question. Second would be an industry specific, logical reasoning kind of a question. And third would be on the technical capabilities.
How about Gaurav? Do you have any different set of questions, or are they more or less similar?
Yeah, like my approach is slightly different, but like if there are options of having more than three, then definitely what Abhinav mentioned. That I also encompass these questions during my like when I have to interview any candidate. So if you talk about me, like uh, so one thing that I would want or I expect out of the candidates is that they should be aware about what is happening like all across the world in context of macroeconomics, because I feel somehow if you have to see yourself as a top business leader like few years down the line, that is definitely something you should be comfortable with. So for example, right now, like all across the world, there is this talks of rate cuts. Will it happen or not? A soft landing happening in the US or not? Like inflation and all these, stories. So I would definitely want to understand like whatever is happening or in the, like news or in the trend right now. What is the candidate's view on that? So that is one thing. Then second, like on the three financial statements, as Abhinav was also mentioning, I would want them to, like first of all, walk me through their current financials and then move me to 1 year ahead. Like how would you actually, forecast so that I understand the candidate's thought process and actually does he have that acumen? Like that is actually very essential or at the core of any FP&A role. Then third, like I think each of us understands that profit or the revenue does not ultimately matters. What ultimately matters is around your cash flow. So like something around the cash flow or the working capital is like would be my third go-to question, because I feel like many people actually like struggle around topics around like cash flow or the working capital. They do not understand. It's just that वो theoretical knowledge होगी हम सबके पास जो हमने पढ़ा है वो बोल देंगे, but if you actually like uh, one thing is like negative working capital, is it good or is it bad? Still I see a lot of people struggling. First of all, I have seen a lot of reactions that yeah, working capital. So now, what is this negative working capital? They fail to understand what it is. And then, if I talk about like, is it good or bad? And then just want I want to hear actually that thought process. If you are saying that bad, it's okay. Like there is nothing right or wrong. So वो क्यों bad है? Like I want to understand and like deep dive and understand कि what is the thought process that is going in their mind. So that's how, like these would be my three top interview questions if I have to, like assess anybody.
First one was on macroeconomics, so what's happening in the world. The second one you mentioned was on financial statements, but how do they forecast it for 1 year down? And the third one would be some questions around working capital,
Working capital or cash flow, yeah.
that you know that the person has done it practically in
Yeah.
their. I think that brings me to the next section, which is probably the last, and we'll wrap up after this. How about if somebody wants to build some skills and training in this area, because there are so many new things to learn. How would you, I mean, what, how, if you had to approach this today, knowing whatever you have known for the last 5 years, what were some certifications, trainings that you would do first, second, third, so that it helps you get to the skills that you eventually want to faster. So, or if you are advising somebody in your team, if they ask you a question, okay, which certifications, which trainings have helped you the most? So, if you can share some of those certifications, trainings.
I think on the, as you have rightly said, Asif, and the way I see FP&A today, it has evolved. I think today everyone needs to be prepared, even they are going for any interview, because now the competition has increased tremendously. It was earlier that, there were no, even from the interviewer perspective, there used to be less expectations. But today, whenever we are interviewing or, going for any interview, the expectations has increased. Okay. So whatever we have discussed till now, they should know, right? And for that, it is very important to have, both the skills and certifications. So the candidate should really assess, if I talk about skills, what we discussed, do they have skill of, business acumen, storytelling, all those skills, do they already have it or not? If they don't have it, how they can really build it? Okay, so there are a lot of certifications and courses that are there that was not 5 years ago when we kind of approach this. So definitely, I think I would recommend to look at from that perspective wherever they lack. Okay, so there are certain tailor-made courses addressing those skills. I would not really encourage someone to do a generic course, if they have certain skills already available with them. So, firstly, they need to do that check within themselves. What are the skills? What are they not comfortable with? And then understand what are the certifications that are currently available. Okay. And then, for example, if they feel, they have a good business acumen and financial analysis acumen, so though they don't have to really, go for any generic FP&A certification. But if they are lacking in building a financial model, so they have to look for a training that gives them hands on how to really build financial models. Okay, if they are looking for a particular technology, for example, they want it to be a more focused on data visualization training, right? Maybe they need to really understand whether they should learn Power BI, whether they should learn Tableau, or whether they should learn PowerPoint. Okay, so I personally, after becoming or been in this industry for 4 or 5 years, I want to be very honest. I always, to stay updated till now in my professional career, I've been also attending a lot of certifications and webinars every year just to keep myself to the pace. Okay. So I would say that, if a person does not have any skill, I think he should attend a generic FP&A introductory kind of a curriculum wherein he should understand all the three bits of, F stands for financial planning, P stands for performance management, A stands for all the ad hoc things that is expected, a generic tour of FP&A. Once he learns that, then he should really focus on building specific skills. So there is a good skill, there is a good course available for financial modeling. There is a good course available for storytelling. There is a good course available for learning a tool. Okay, so maybe Asif, maybe we can share some of our top recommended courses that I have personally done, and that maybe we can share in last 3 4 years, something that maybe we can recommend. Yeah.
I think that will be very helpful. Gaurav, do you have any specific recommendations? So Abhinav has answered this very politically correct, not taking any name. Have any specific names? We'd love to hear. What you have taken? What courses you have taken? In
I think as Abhinav was mentioning, like the landscape has actually changed a lot since we started. So if I talk about 6 or 7 years ago when we started, us time we did not have so many resources because hardly anybody knew about it. But at least what I feel today is there is little bit more awareness as compared to what we had during our times. Still अभी उतना नहीं है, but still there are like lot of people at least who have heard about FP&A and they have like a little or slightest ideas of what FP&A is. And luckily there is actually lot of content that has come on FP&A in the last like 3 4 years, and one of the top voices definitely has been you, Asif. So I think there are multiple modes that anybody who is looking into getting into FP&A, they can have like different mediums how they actually gain or understand about this field in a better manner. I think one could be like either through LinkedIn, like like trying to reach out to top FP&A voices like you, Asif, and there are like 20 n number of other people as well who are there. Apart from it, for example, if you want to like you are targeting a specific company and FP&A role in that specific company, so you can like just go through like whosoever is in their FP&A team. You can try out reaching out to them, understanding what the role looks like or about the company, about the team, and all that kind of stuff. Apart from it, again, there is a lot of content on YouTube as well in context of FP&A. Uh, Apart from it, nowadays there are a lot of certifications. But in context of consuming the video or the certification, I would say that I just want to give this disclaimer to everybody. I personally feel कि जहाँ पे आपको सिर्फ थियोरेटिकली विदाउट एनी प्रैक्टिकल एक्सपीरियंस, इफ दे आर टीचिंग यू, like that's good, but somehow you are not able to retain it. That's what I feel. And उसका जो effectiveness है वो इतना ज्यादा नहीं होता है as compared to if you are attending something जहाँ पे आपको practically hands on आपसे खुद कुछ exercises या कुछ trainings करा रहे हैं. So my advice in case if anybody like goes to any content creator on YouTube or on in context of like any of the certifications, I would advise you to join only that like course जहाँ पे आपको practical hands-on experience मिल रहा है, because I feel that is the most effective way to learn, and in that manner you are actually able to like retain as well, and आपको एक glimpse मिलेगा, because sometimes like we feel that okay, FPN is something I want to like go ahead with, but क्या पता वो मैं certification के time जब मैं hands on कर रहा हूँ मेरा इंटरेस्ट उसी में लूज हो गया, because sometimes it happens as well, we may think but we actually like may not like it while actually doing it. So I feel that is very critical. And again here I think Asif जो आपकी master class है, FPN master class, that is like really one of the best master classes out there, because आप जो hands-on experience you give, and then obviously uh, more than 10 plus years of experience, practical experience that you bring in your master class, that is very again will be fruitful for whosoever like attends your master class. Apart from it, I think काफी सारे blogs भी है, art मतलब like on LinkedIn there are very lot of newsletters as well, very specific, and in fact FP&A के अंदर भी now there are like lot of niche. I have actually like seen people addressing problems of SaaS industry only in FP&A. So उसमें भी काफी niche आ चुका है. So again, if anybody like who has decided or who is clear, या मान लो जिसको FP&A आता भी है, now वो उसके अंदर भी अपना niche बनाना चाहते हैं, I think again there is lot of content there as well. काफी सारे अच्छे newsletters है. I also like follow some of the newsletters. Yeah, I try to be as regular जब भी time मिलता है to go through those content, because I I would say that I am also still learning there. Like each day my objective is definitely to like learn a little more than what knowledge I had yesterday. So yeah, that would be my 2 cents.
I think I'll summarize what Abhinav, and thank you for mentioning my course. I did not mean you to, I mean, praise that.
No, no.
So,
That
Asif, I think I just want to add one perspective, interesting perspective. Okay. So, I was talking to one of the recruiters, recently. So, we were discussing normally, about FP&A hirings landscape. So, I kind of, ask, them a very basic question, so whenever anyone is joining their team, okay, so the time they are taking to train any resource, and that is on some of the basics is close to 3 to 6 months. Okay. And the way I kind of understood, if the candidate already has that, hands-on experience on such deliverables from day one, the training time of 3 to 6 months reduces to 1 month. Okay. And that is how it really becomes value for any company recruiter. So attending, certifications and master classes adds value here for any company, because typical time frame of 6 months has been reduced, due to such trainings and master classes that candidate knows from day one. So that is something recent, the way, because there has been a lot of questions put to me on LinkedIn, if I do your master class, if we do your this, whether we'll get a job, whether we'll not get a job. So I was trying to research on it, and the way I understood, these kind of certifications and master classes increases your chances of getting selected. And one of the value that you are creating for any company is the company who were initially spending time and money for 6 months, okay, it will be reduced from 6 months to 1 or 2 months. So I think that is something I wanted to add.
That's a brilliant insight you have shared, Abhinav, and I also agree with it completely. That's where, the value of these certifications, and it actually, makes you stand out of the competition when you appear for any of the interviews, because the recruiter definitely would be very impressed if you have done a good certification from a good, source. They will also understand that, yes, then this person would be actually, having lot of practical hands-on knowledge. So the training time that they would have to invest would be substantially lower as compared to other candidates in the room. And additionally, one more small point, I think like Abhinav during his portion, he brought it up, but I would again, I like to reiterate that like in whenever you are appearing for any of the FP&A rules, be it a fresher or experienced one as well, at least Excel is something that you should at least be, like a good master at. At least Excel, if not any other tool, at least Excel is definitely something I think people should, invest in. What again, the what medium of learning for them could be whatever it could be, some of the free stuff over the YouTube or some of the paid master, courses. That is totally up to, individual's preference, but at least Excel is, I think, that we all should be really good at.
Whatever we discussed in the last maybe 10 minutes, I'll quickly summarize. So, first, Abhinav, I completely agree. So, you should not be taking any courses just for the certification, but identify areas where you are weak and then go for those. I think that will be the best use of the candidates or participants' time, and that will also give them the maximum leverage in terms of improving their skills. So that is something I completely agree on. And also what Gaurav mentioned. So go for courses which gives you hands-on practical experience of going into the Excel files, of going into the Power BI dashboard, or going into a FP&A tool, rather than watching videos. And uh, and uh, that also I agree that just watching stuff will not make you good in those skills. It is when you do those skills. So what we also recommend is for whoever come to us in coaching or mentoring programs is to build their own portfolio. So whatever they've learned from us or from online courses, whether it be through other online courses, uh, is to pick up some examples and build their portfolio. So build a financial model yourself, build a Power BI dashboard yourself, build a competitor analysis yourself. So having that as a portfolio and showing that to the recruiter or the manager definitely increases their chances of getting selected. And also what Abhinav mentioned at the end was on 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 because you're helping. I mean, after doing these courses or after doing putting investing in these skills for yourself, you're actually helping the company to reduce the time for training. And any company would prefer somebody who's come and trained versus somebody who's very new if they have an option to pick. And the Excel. So I also agree on that. Excel is going to be, and Excel has been in the last I don't know 50 years, or I don't know, not 50 years, maybe 20 years since it has been there, has been the go-to tool. If not anything else, is going to be is going to be the most important skill that people usually check for. So I think that brings us to the end of our today's discussion. Thank you so much. I think I got so many valuable insights, nuggets, which will go into the book for sure. So thank you so much for that. Before we let you go, I know that I have seen your course on FP&A and financial modeling. So maybe if you can talk a little bit about that, how can people find that? And also, if people need to reach out to you for questions, how what would be the best way to do that?
We have two courses, on the Thinking Bridge platform.
Mhm.
So, Thinking Bridge platform offers normally the kind of courses that bridges the, practical gaps that we discussed, how you can be ready within, experience to the real life, deliverables. So that is what we kind of create that virtual environment so that a candidate can have that feeling. Okay, that is what any deliverable looks like. So we have two courses available. One is on the FP&A and data modeling, wherein we kind of focus on initial 6 months, that is expected in a job, the data preparation part, how to capture inputs, how to prepare reports. So that is more, our focus. We are building candidate, we are kind of providing what they're expected in 6 months, 12 months to be, something that they should know from day one. So that is on the FP&A and data modeling. But again, when we kind of explain them that data preparation part, we kind of gave him the entire walkthrough of the journey. Okay, so that is what you are expected to prepare first, then how to prepare commentaries, then how to really communicate, storytelling part. And that training is totally on Excel. Okay, so that is course one. The second course is a data visualization course for Tableau. So Tableau is a very prominent data visualization tool used all across the globe. So we have recorded, how to build financial models in Tableau. Someone who wants to do and learn advanced Tableau skills. So these are the two courses that we are offering on Thinking Bridge platform. Definitely, anyone can look out easily. Okay, so that is on the trainings. And personally, I'm very much active on LinkedIn. Okay, so feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. It may take a day or two for me to reply back, but normally I will reply back within these time frames.
Thanks, Abhinav. And how about you, Gaurav? What's the best way to reach you? And if you want to add anything that Gaurav talked about on the courses.
No, so like I am also available on LinkedIn, and anybody who wants to speak to me can directly, like approach me on LinkedIn. Apart from it, on the courses, but as Abhinav mentioned, so we have these two courses, which we jointly prepared for, like for somehow basically bridging this gap, because this is something that we felt like is something missing in the market. Uh, because a lot of courses they just like give knowledge, but unless and until the candidate does not do a hands-on thing, at least I and Abhinav feel that like that is not the best way. So hence we prepared this content for Thinking Bridge. So anybody who is interested in like consuming this content, so they can go over the Thinking Bridge platform and have a look at the courses that we have there.
Definitely, and at least I've seen the FP&A and data modeling course, and you also shared the guide, detailed guide on that, which was very comprehensive. So I would highly recommend you check out both the courses on FP&A data modeling and as well as Tableau. If you're looking for a course on Tableau, I'd highly suggest or recommend you check out these courses. So thank you so much, Abhinav. Thank you so much, Gaurav, and I hope we meet again soon.
Yeah, thank you so much,
Yeah,
Asif,
thanks,
for
Asif. Thank you
having us
for
here.
having
It
us.
was lovely talking to you, and thank you for like bringing the nostalgia.
Same, 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 same.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Bye.